Hello, I'm Dango Rose. Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast, where everybody's listening. The Mountaineer brings you the latest news of the Peak to Peak region, in print, online, through our podcast, social media, and special publications. Now, listen in to the latest news of the area with our local journalists.
Hello there, everybody. Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast. This will be our new regular spot for Music of the Mountains, where to be and what to see. But this week, we're changing things up a little bit. We're focusing this week on a stand-up comedy performance instead of a music performance. As such, this is not Music of the Mountains this week, but rather performing in the peaks, where to be and what to see. So, let's jump straight into our interview with stand-up comedian Aaron Foster.
All right. So, do you mind just introducing yourself real quick?
Sure. My name is Aaron Foster. I'm a comedian based in Reno, Nevada, and coming to doing a bunch of shows in Colorado in May.
Sweet. And one of those shows is coming to the Backdoor Theater in Netherlands.
Yes, I lived in Boulder for about 5 years, I think 2010 to 2014, 15-ish, something like that. And so I know Netherlands a little bit, and the tour I've been doing has been focusing more on sort of smaller towns, smaller theaters, because I'm a comedian that no one's ever heard of, and selling tickets in sort of major metro areas is very challenging for me. And so I've been targeting these smaller areas where people maybe have a little bit fewer options. I think I do a good show, but it's tough to sell tickets when people haven't heard of you. So the smaller towns have been really good for me. And I love, Colorado and Boulder, and got to see friends, and have a couple of friends in Netherlands as well. So excited to be able to do something there.
Sweet. Yeah. And so in terms of your career, how did you get started in comedy in the first place? How's it kind of developed over the years, all that stuff? What's been your journey?
Sure. I did stand up for the first time when I lived in Los Angeles back in 2009. That was kind of the end of about a 5-year run there, when I was doing acting and pursuing all of that kind of stuff, and had a little bit of success in that world, but not kind of what I had hoped for in terms of newsflash. I did not become a A-list Oscar-winning actor. So I did stand up for about the last 6 or 7 months that I lived there. And oddly enough, one of the things that kind of made me stop was I was about 37, I think, at the time. And I got a little taste of it, and I realized, wow, this is going to be really hard, and it's going to take a long time to, figure it out and to get established and to become a professional and make a living. And so that was one of the reasons that I stepped away, because I just thought it would take too long. And then, of course, I have come back to it now in my 50s with a little bit different perspective on it, and just something that I really love doing. I opened a restaurant in Reno, Nevada right before the pandemic hit, literally about a month before. And one of the ways I kind of got through that was through a ton of social media, and just sort of doing all these silly sort of movie scene recreations, and just talking to my phone every day to make sure people knew I was still there. And it made me fall back in love with writing and performing and comedy and things like that. And so I sold my restaurant at the end of 2021 and started writing stand-up again. So I've been doing it now as full-time as anyone will let me for about 3 years. So this is what I've been doing for the last year and a half, is traveling around the country, essentially putting myself on tour. Nobody's asking for it. So I've just trying to accelerate the learning curve, I guess. And I have a show that I think is good and is worth seeing, and I'm proud of it, but I'm not on anyone's radar as far as comedy clubs go, for the most part. I get some feature spots here and there, but to headline a comedy club is, that's not really an option for me right now, because people haven't heard of me, so I just do it myself.
Sweet. And what kept you kind of coming back to comedy? What stuck out about it to you in the first place, and what got you inspired to come back to it in that way?
I fell in love with comedy probably early teens, and have just been a huge fan ever since. And I think kind of two reasons. One is, comedians, they say things in, kind of like, I never thought of it like that before. It might be the most basic sort of idea or premise or everyday activity, but sort of need to put a new spin on it, look at it from a different perspective. So that was always fascinating to me. But then even as a kid, every once in a while I would think, I have thought of it like that before, but I didn't know that you could say that out loud, these ideas that are sort of maybe outside of the mainstream, or like I said, a different perspective. I thought I was the only one who thought that. And then so comedians for me as a kid were somebody to kind of identify with and I think feel a little bit less alone. Like, oh, someone else thinks like I do about these things. And I didn't realize that. So that was a big part of comedy for me as a kid. And then the last, 5-6 years, there's been a boom of comics who are really my favorite comics now, talking a lot about really personal stuff, a lot about mental health, depression, anxiety, this kind of stuff. And, I have struggled with that stuff my whole life, and as have many members of my family. So it was another thing like, oh, I didn't know you could talk about that out loud and make jokes about it and make people laugh and make people feel better about maybe their own situation. So that was a big inspiration for me when I came back, because I want to write about this stuff. I want to be really honest about my life and maybe some darker topics that, might not seem funny when you start out. But it's been, I hate to say like my comedy is my therapy. I think that's maybe a little bit of a turnoff, but it is to an extent, and it's just been a way for me to talk about this stuff in a little bit different way that's, outside of therapy or outside of like stress and drama and like, oh my God, how are we going to fix this? And like, well, it is what it is, and this is my life. And so if I can make jokes about it every once in a while, that's a nice thing. They say laughter actually changes your brain chemistry. And so that's kind of what I'm out to do, for myself and hopefully for people who come to my shows.
For sure. Are there any particular influences that have inspired you throughout your journey, and particularly in the last few years with that?
Yeah, my favorite comics, there's a small handful of them that I always try to say them in alphabetical order in case any of them ever come across me saying this, so that they don't think like, well, he likes me, but he put me fourth. It's like, it's alphabetical. So Maria Bamford, I think, is the greatest working comedian right now. And she's not on a lot of people's radars, but she's not as known as she should be. She's an eccentric woman who's, I think, maybe early 60s now. And, she talks a lot about mental health. She talks about going into the mental hospital, suicidal ideation, all this kind of stuff. But she is really amazing what she does. And from there, I go Maria Bamford. Mike Birbiglia, I think is great in the way he does sort of long form storytelling, but that is actually absolutely peppered with jokes. And then I would say Neil Brennan, who's done a couple of specials about mental health as well. Gary Gulman, I think, is my favorite comic. I think he's a brilliant writer, and nobody does what he does in deconstructing mental health and long form, taking one topic. I mean, he's got a 15-minute bit on checking out at Trader Joe's. He's really brilliant. And I think Mark Maron and Taylor Tomlinson, both, more comics who talk about their lives and very personal stuff. And so that has all been inspirational to me in different ways and things that I identify with them. And again, like, oh, they're talking about it. They're joking about it. Maybe I could, and I'm not putting myself on that level, but like, oh, maybe I could do that. Those comics have really helped me in my life. It's like, oh, maybe I could do that both for myself and for other people. So I know that I hesitate to say that. I feel like it comes across or can be very pretentious, but like, I'm gonna do comedy to help people. It's like, well, I'm helping myself but I do have conversations with people after shows that the people that like my stuff seem to really like it. And but I do know that it's not for everybody, and it's a little bit different than the sort of very popular forms of comedy right now of crowd work and things like that. Like, I don't really do that.
Fair. In terms of the shows that you have done, you've talked about how this journey has allowed you to express a lot of those subjects in a way that you never thought was possible. And so was there anything that kind of shifted in your perception of comedy as you were kind of making this transition? Is there anything, what's it been like kind of making that transition into what your routine is now, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just really, it's easy to say, but and just kind of blow past it. But like, you can talk about anything. I mean, the punchlines are the laughs are the most important thing for sure with billing. I don't like to bill myself as a one-person show. I know there are some people who sort of describe it that way, but I do about 90 minutes, and by my count, there's 231 jokes in there. So it's not 10-minute monologues in the middle of this thing, even though, I do call it mostly jokes because there's 2 or 3 sections that are about 2 minutes long that are not particularly funny, but work within the bigger structure of the piece. So I think I think really, you hear like, oh, you can talk about anything as a comic, and then really like seeing other people do it and then doing it myself and seeing it work was, reassuring and encouraging. But it's taken me a long time to be able to talk about some of that stuff. I mean, I talk a lot about suicide in one portion of the show. And that's, the first time I did those jokes, it did not go particularly well for me. But it's taken me a long time to kind of figure out how to do it in a way that is okay for people, and then that is very funny, and that is doesn't upset people and all that kind of stuff. So it's been a long process.
Sure. But in terms of being able to develop that routine and being able to see people react to it, what's been great about being able to connect with people through that comedy since you've restarted it?
The best thing about it is hearing people laugh about it. It's seeing people be surprised about that topic coming up in the way that it does in my show. And it's talking to people afterwards and sometimes getting emails and comments and things like that from people who really are grateful that somebody is talking about that, making them laugh about such a subject. Most of us have been touched in some way by maybe not suicide, but mental health, depression, anxiety, whether it's ourselves, family members, friends. And it's talked about more than it was, certainly, but it's still, I don't think, talked about enough. And it's certainly not joked about that often. So it's nice to be able to connect with people and that kind of stuff. And people after my shows, I always, if they say, "Oh my God, I related to so much of what you said," and I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm sorry to hear that." But it is a way for people to connect, and that's the best part of it for sure. Being able to laugh about that stuff, even though you may wake up tomorrow and be like, "Oh yeah, it's not really that funny today," or whatever.
Well, is there anything in general that you hope people do take away long-term from your shows when they come to see your routine?
Well, the most important thing is that they have a good time and that they laugh. It's not, like I said, I do jokes about depression. I do jokes about mental health. I do jokes about some of this dark stuff. I do jokes about Paul Rudd and dating and, being dating apps and, this kind of stuff too. But I do try to let people know that there is that other part of my show so that they know what to expect. Yeah, I just want people to have a good time for an hour and a half. That's the main thing. And if they can take anything else away from that, that's just a bonus in terms of maybe seeing somebody else that has some of the same issues that they do and things that don't get talked about. But the laughter is far and away number one. And, all this stuff is written as stand-up for performing, in stand-up clubs and whatnot.
Sweet. And I think we talked about this before. Is this your first major tour that's restarting again? Is it have you been touring already a little bit before?
I've been doing this thing where I rent these small theaters all over the country. I've been doing it for about 18 months. And it kind of comes and goes. It hasn't been totally consistent. I'll do a run, I'll have a really busy month of 10 or 12 or 14 shows, and then I'll have, 3 or 4 weeks off or whatever. Because I do this all myself. I don't have a manager. I don't have an agent. I don't have any. So finding the theaters, booking the space, selling the tickets, promoting, marketing, all this kind of stuff. It's very, very time consuming. And I'm kind of over this now. The first year there was a lot of I booked 10 shows. That means I have to sell, whatever it is, 1,000 seats or something like that. And the Backdoor Theater is I think the biggest theater that I've rented. I honestly didn't quite realize how big it was when I rented it. It's usually the first thing I look for, and I try to keep it under 100. But when I was like, all right, well, let's see what happens. So yeah, I've been doing this, for the last 18 months or so, and just trying to refine this thing. And it's not going to be on Netflix, but at some point we'll have it professionally filmed in the next few months, and it'll go on YouTube, and we'll see what happens.
For sure. And yeah, I don't know. Is there just anything else in general that you want people to know about this tour or other things that are upcoming or anything else about your
Well, I think for the Netherlands show specifically, I am donating a portion of every ticket to the local, I'm going to forget the acronym, but I think it's the Netherlands Fire Prevention Authority. I believe that's what it is. I like to do stuff like that with local nonprofits to sort of give back, support little local communities if they, when they support me. And it helps get the word out. Usually, it's sort of, there's a selfish motive to it that hopefully it sells more tickets, but it's also it gets the word out, and I'd rather give the money to a good local cause than pay for another ad on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. So, I always like to mention that it does, whether you think I'm funny or not, you can walk out thinking, well, some of the money went to a good local cause. Yeah. So, including that information is always good.
For sure. I don't know. I think those are the big questions that I have on my end.
Okay.
I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, and it was great talking to you about it.
Yeah, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much to Aaron for coming on board and joining us for the Mountain Ear podcast. He'll be performing at the Backdoor Theater, located in the Netherlands Community Center at 750 North Highway 72 in Netherlands, on Thursday, May 14th, 2026. Doors open at 6 p.m., and the show starts at 7 p.m. You can purchase tickets ahead of time and learn more about the upcoming show by heading to aaronfoster.com. shop.myshopify.com. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to our very special episode of Performing in the Peaks. We'll be back next week with our regular Music of the Mountains segment. Be sure to subscribe to the Mountain Ear Podcast wherever you get your podcasts: iTunes, Spotify, Podchaser, YouTube, and more. And be sure to subscribe to the Mountain Ear if you want to support our efforts. Head to the mtnear.com, click on the subscribe button in the top right corner of our homepage, and get yourself or someone you love a physical or digital subscription. And be sure to keep up with us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at mtn.ear. If you have any questions for the paper or for the podcast, be sure to reach out to myself at media@themountaineer.com, my co-host Tyler Hickman at tyler@themountaineer.com, our editor-in-chief Barbara Hardt at info@themountaineer.com, and general inquiries at frontdesk@themountaineer.com. We'll see you guys next time. Have a great rest of your day.
And that's it for our show. Subscribe online to get more access to more news, weekly updates to our community calendar, and a link to our YouTube channel by visiting themountaineer.com. Be sure to use the coupon code PODCAST when subscribing for a 10% discount, only available to our listeners. If you are in the local Peak to Peak area, be sure to pick up a print edition of The Mountaineer at a local business. I'm Dango Rose. Thank you for listening.